Roles of living things. Living things in an ecosystem depend on one another for basic needs such as food, shelter, and protection. Interdependence. The living things found in an ecosystem are interdependent. This means that living things depend on each other to meet their needs. You know that many animals depend on plants for food, but organisms depend on each other for other things too. Plants can be a source of shelter for animals. In turn, animals can provide protection for plants. The swollen thorn acacia tree and a type of stinging ant are interdependent. The ants live in the hollowed out bulbs that are the base of the thorns. They feed on a sugary liquid that is found in the tree's leaves. As the ants use the tree for shelter and food, the tree benefits too. When another kind of animal starts grazing on the tree, the ants swarm and sting the animal, driving it away. There is another example of interdependence that occurs in the Pacific Ocean. The sea anemone is an animal that lives on the ocean floor. It uses its poisonous tentacles to capture fish and other animals. But one type of fish is not in danger from the anemone. In fact, this fish makes its home right there among the tentacles. Some scientists think that the clownfish has a coating on its body that protects it from the anemone's sting. In its home, the clownfish is safe from its own enemies. They stay away from the poisonous tentacles of the anemone. The anemone benefits from the clownfish too. The fish keeps the anemone's tentacles clean by eating scraps of food that cling to them. In Africa, a similar relationship exists between the Nile crocodile and a bird called the Egyptian plover. The crocodile allows the bird into its mouth. There, the bird eats leeches attached to the crocodile's gums. Both animals benefit. The bird gets a meal, the crocodile gets its teeth cleaned. Relationships in an ecosystem. Every living thing has a role to play within its ecosystem. You can think of this as the particular job an organism does in its environment. Plants play the role of producer. A producer is an organism that makes its own food. The food that plants make is used for energy by organisms that eat the plants. All organisms need energy. Plants use energy from the sunlight to make food. In turn, plants use energy from the food they make to grow and to produce offspring. Some of the food is stored in the leaves, stems, and roots of a plant. When an animal eats a plant, energy in the plant is transferred to the animal. Animals are consumers. A consumer gets energy by eating plants or by eating other animals that eat plants. Consumers use this energy to live. In the end, all the consumers in an ecosystem depend on producers for food. Without producers, the other organisms in an ecosystem could not survive. Shelter is another basic need of living things that is often met with the help of other organisms. For example, squirrels and many kinds of birds make their homes among the branches of trees. There, hidden in the leaves, the nests of these animals are protected from the hot sun. They are also protected from enemies. Trees provide shelter and protection for plants too. For example, some plants grow best in moist, shady conditions. Plants such as ferns and mosses might find shelter at the base of a tree. Some animals provide shelter for other animals. Woodchucks make their homes by digging tunnels deep under the soil. But they are not the only ones that live in these tunnels. When the woodchuck moves on, animals such as skunks and rabbits may move in. Hermit crabs also find shelter in homes built by other animals. Hermit crabs do not have a hard shell of their own. They use the shells that snails or other animals have left behind for path of energy. In an ecosystem, energy flows from the sun to producers and then from producers to consumers. Energy from the sun. All living things need energy to survive. They get that energy from food. You know that some animals eat plants and some animals eat other animals that eat plants. Plants do not eat food. Most plants make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis takes place in a plant's leaves. A material in the leaves traps light energy from the sun. During photosynthesis, plants use carbon dioxide gas from the air to make food in the form of sugar. The original source of energy for most living things is the sun. Predator and prey. An animal that hunts other animals for food is called a predator. A fox is one kind of predator. A rabbit is prey for a fox. A prey is an animal that is hunted for food by another animal. An animal can be both predator and prey. For example, a fox may be the prey of a bobcat. The illustration shows how energy flows from the sun to plants. Recall that plants are producers and animals are consumers. When a consumer, such as a rabbit, eats a plant, it receives some of the plant's energy. When the rabbit becomes the prey of the fox receives a smaller amount of the plant's energy. Food chains. A food chain shows the path of food energy in an ecosystem from plants to animals. In the food chain shown, a vole gets energy from eating a plant called jewweed. The skunk gets energy from eating the vole. The owl gets energy from eating the skunk. Food chains are different in different ecosystems, but the first link in a food chain is always a producer. In most ecosystems, the producers are green plants. Matter and energy enter the food chain through these plants. This happens when the plants, such as the jewweed, use the energy in the sunlight to make food through the process of photosynthesis. The second link in the food chain shown is a vole. A vole is an herbivore. An herbivore is an animal that eats only plants. The vole gets energy from the green plants it eats. The third and fourth links in any food chain are either carnivores or omnivores. An omnivore is an animal that eats both plants and animals. A skunk is an omnivore. It eats insects, earthworms, mice, and voles. It also eats berries and nuts. A carnivore is an animal that eats only other animals. The great horned owl is a carnivore. The owl gets energy by eating the skunk. In a pond ecosystem, the tiny plants are the first link in the food chain. The tiny animals that eat the tiny plants are the second link in the chain. Recall that plant-eating organisms are herbivores. Other links in a pond food chain are the small and large fish that eat the herbivores. A raccoon is an omnivore that is often a part of a pond ecosystem. A raccoon eats the small fish in the chain. Because it is an omnivore, it also eats plant material such as berries and acorns. At each link in a food chain, some of the food energy is lost. For example, a sunflower plant does not store all the food that it makes. Some of the energy from the food is used to develop flowers and seeds for the plant. A deer that eats the sunflower gets only some of the energy the plant captured from the sun. The deer uses some of the energy from the sunflower to run from predators. So, less energy is available to a predator that eats the deer. In a food chain, the further link is from producers. The less energy there is available. Because of this, most food chains have only 4 or 5 links.